Hello there, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Chaz Ciadello.
This week, the Trump criminal hush money trial hears opening statements and witness testimony is now underway.
And surprise, surprise, Congress finally passed a massive foreign aid bill, yet somehow it could still cost the Speaker his job. But first...
After last week's jury selection and other housekeeping, the criminal trial of former President Donald Trump moved swiftly into opening statements and hearing from the first witnesses this week. The trial, which is expected to last around 6 weeks, centres on claims that Trump falsified business records to fraudulently disguise hush money payments to prevent negative news stories before his 2016 election win. Prosecutors say that this was a far-reaching conspiracy involving Trump, his former attorney Michael Cohen, and the publisher of the tabloid newspaper The National Enquirer, David Pecker, who was first to be called to the witness stand.
He has already begun his testimony here, in which prosecutors have outlined that he will discuss an August of 2015 meeting between Michael Cohen, Donald Trump, and himself. This was just 2 months after he launched his presidential bid.
Prosecutors claim that under the arrangement hatched at that August 2015 meeting, Pecker would keep an eye out for potentially damaging stories about Trump during the presidential campaign, pay for exclusive rights to the story, and then not publish it, a so-called catch and kill strategy. Pecker would also help Trump by printing positive stories about him and negative ones about his Republican rivals like Ben Carson, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. On the witness stand this week, Pecker confirmed when it came to the $130,000 payment to former adult performer Stormy Daniels, he hesitated to pay for her story because he had not been reimbursed by Trump for an earlier hush money payment to Playboy model Karen McDougal, who also claimed to have had sex with Trump. Ultimately, the money was produced by Cohen, who was later repaid by Trump. Daniels had contacted the National Enquirer just weeks before the 2016 election, claiming to have had an extramarital affair with Trump. Those revelations would have come right after Trump's campaign had almost been derailed by the airing of the Access Hollywood tape, where he famously boasted,
"Hey, when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything."
According to Assistant District Attorney Matthew Colangelo, in that context, the cover-up of the affair with Stormy Daniels amounted to election fraud, pure and simple. Even though election fraud is not charged in this case, it's the crime that Trump is alleged to have been covering up by fiddling his books. But in his opening statement, Trump's defence attorney Todd Blanche denied that amounted to election interference, telling jurors, "There's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy." Blanche has already set out to discredit former Trump attorney Michael Cohen, noting that he is a criminal and claiming that Trump had nothing to do with the invoice that Cohen sent to the Trump Corporation to be reimbursed for paying Daniels out of his own mortgage account. And Trump had plenty to say about that invoice.
And this is what they try and take me off the trail for. That checks being paid to a lawyer. He is a lawyer, or was a lawyer.
So, we are presented with two very different versions of events. One amounts to a minor clerical error made by somebody, and another, a far-reaching conspiracy to win an election by paying hush money and illegally covering it up. Trump has been on his best behaviour in front of the jury so far, that according to reporters in the courtroom, there's no TV or audio from it, but he's been speaking to the press before and after most days of the trial. Sometimes it seems in defiance of a gag order. He's also sounding off on his social media platform Truth Social, where his litany of complaints are showing a certain inconsistency.
This trial is a long, rigged endurance contest.
And then calling it
the scam rushed trial.
Rushed or not, Judge Juan Merchan has kept things moving along so far. David Pecker has been giving lots of details this week about the alleged conspiracy. Trump, meanwhile, is hoping for what amounts to a get-out-of-jail-free card from the United States Supreme Court, which this week will also consider his claims of sweeping presidential immunity, although that won't help him in this case, Chaz.
It won't, and it won't help Trump with his most immediate concern, which is whether he has repeatedly violated his gag order, as you flagged before. Trump's not allowed to make any public comment about jury jurors, witnesses, court staff, or their families. But he does appear to have done just that at least 11 times so far. Judge Merchant held a hearing about this overnight, and there was one incident in particular he was focusing on. It all started with this Fox News moment from Jesse Waters when the court was selecting their jury last week.
They are trying to rig this jury. They are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge. They're saying, oh, have you ever said anything on social media about Donald Trump? No, I can't remember. Well, what about this post where you said he should be in prison? Oh, yeah, that one. Strike.
Okay, talking about rigged jury, that's not good from Waters. But then Trump posted an apparent quote from Waters on Truth Social saying they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get on the Trump jury. That's supposedly a quote from Jesse Waters. Now, that sounds very much like a comment about potential jurors. Worse still, the judge noted that in his post about Jesse Waters' statement, Trump didn't even quote Waters directly. Merchant said, "Your client manipulated what was said and put it in quotes." Trump's lawyer agreed it wasn't a true repost, but argued it still wasn't clear that he'd violated the gag order. The problem is, as I keep on saying, Trump's lawyer is an idiot, because Trump actually did quote Jesse Waters' tweet about the clip. He quoted it word for word, so he wasn't actually putting words in Waters' mouth at all. But the reason all of this is so serious is because Waters also decided to rate the jury one by one at a different moment, including juror number 2.
She said two things that really stuck out. One, quote, "I don't really have an opinion of Trump," and, quote, "no one is above the law." I'm not so sure about juror number 2.
Now, that was an unfortunate comment because the next day, juror number 2 expressed definite concerns about being in public. She said, "Yesterday alone, I had friends and colleagues push things to my phone questioning my identity as a juror." In particular, she'd been outed as an oncology nurse and her hospital had been widely reported in the news, so it was easy to figure out her identity. And she then dropped out of the case. Now that is a big deal. Unsurprisingly, prosecutors flagged Trump's jury comment as the most serious of his violations, calling it very troubling. They said what happened here was exactly what this order was meant to prevent, and the defendant doesn't care. The irony of this, though, is that Jesse Waters, as irresponsible as he was not one of the media outlets that revealed where juror number 2 worked. So as bad as he might have been, and then Trump might have been, they probably aren't directly responsible for juror number 2 dropping out. But from what I can see, the court seems confused about that point. And to top it all off, the judge finished the day pleading with Trump's terrible lawyer to make a more substantive argument. The judge explicitly said, "You're not offering me anything to support your argument." We'll find out what his verdict is in the next few days, John. Or in fact, if Trump gets another lawyer, I would.
A surprising thing happened in the United States Congress this week. It worked, more or less. 6 months after a foreign aid bill was proposed by the White House, 2 months after it passed the Senate, the Republican majority House passed its own $95 billion package this week. But most of the votes came from Democrats because most of the money goes to Ukraine. Speaker Mike Johnson, a Republican, says in the end, not acting was not an option.
I said these are not normal times. They're not. The world is destabilized and it's a tinderbox.
The foreign aid bill was split into 4 parts.
$60 billion to war-torn Ukraine in its fight against Russia. $26 billion for Israel in its war against Hamas, with billions more for humanitarian needs in Gaza.
And after the Ukraine part of the package passed, some members of the House broke into applause, waving Ukrainian flags in celebration.
Okay. The House will be in order.
Passage of this long-awaited aid bill was also met with scenes of celebration in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv and evident relief from President Zelensky.
We appreciate every manifestation of support for our state and independence, our people, and our lives, which Russia wants to bury in ruins. America has shown its leadership from the first days of this war.
Zelensky should be happy, John. According to the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, if Biden signs this bill quickly, there'll be long-range missiles in transit to Ukraine by next week, but in the mail, not Off to the air. Still, the Dems might have gone a bit over the top with the flag waving. It certainly rankled some Republicans. Indiana Congressman Jim Banks asked, when was the last time you saw 200 Democrat politicians proudly waving the American flag? It even annoyed Speaker Mike Johnson.
I just want to say simply what I think most people around the country understand and agree. We should only wave one flag on the House floor. And I think we know which flag that is.
Now, the only reason this bill even passed was because Mike Johnson and a bunch of Republicans chose to work with Democrats. So maybe rewarding them by trolling the other Republicans and being generally obnoxious, not a fantastic idea. But anyway, hey, you do you. An interesting element of this Ukraine funding bill for me, though, was the $10 billion of it that came in the form of a repayable loan, something that Trump had tweeted about at one point. And that was all Lindsey Graham needed to start sucking up again.
This would not have passed without Donald Trump. President Trump has created a loan component to this package that gives us leverage down the road.
Oh, look, while that was pretty obsequious, Graham might actually be right that this bill was assisted by Trump. Not because of the loan idea, but because Trump seemed to at least give the idea behind it grudging approval. Trump recently posted that Europe needed to do more for Ukraine, but he acknowledged that Ukrainian survival and strength is actually important to America. Now, that's not a huge level of support, but it might have given some MAGAs permission to vote for the bill.
Yeah, it seems to have worked one way or another, but not everybody is happy about it. Certainly not Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Shame on the American government. And our military and our government should care about protecting the national security of the United States of America and the Americans that pay their hard-earned tax dollars to fund all of this.
That rant earned Marjorie Taylor Greene this praise from the head of Russia Today television, Margarita Simonyan.
Марджори Тейлор Грин, которую ты показал, красотка. Один из немногих членов Конгресса США, который старается выглядеть как человек в старомодном смысле этого слова. Блондинка, ходит в белых пальто с меховым воротником. Демонстративно гетеросексуально.
That was weird. Taylor Greene is still leading the charge to put forward a motion to vacate the Speaker's chair, effectively sacking Mike Johnson. But for now, he says he's not concerned.
As I've said many times, I don't walk around this building being worried about a motion to vacate. I have to do my job. We did. I've done here what I believe to be the right thing, and that is to allow the House to work its will. And as I've said, you do the right thing and you let the chips fall where they may.
Johnson has certainly taken a risk here, John. Funding Ukraine has majority support, 53 to 47, according to YouGov, but it's only 50-50 amongst independents and only has 39% support amongst Republicans. This bill is also a departure for Johnson himself, who was even voting against Ukraine funding back in 2022, let alone 2023 or now. Even in January this year, Johnson's position was very different.
Before we even talk about Ukraine, I'm going to tell the president what I'm telling all of you, and we've told the American people, border, border, border. We have to take care of our own house. We have to secure our own border before we talk about doing anything else.
Okay, I get it. So why did he give up on the border bill condition? Johnson said it was very simple. He wanted the border to be part of everything the House did, but he just didn't have the votes. And he's right. He put yet another border bill on the floor this week, and it once again didn't get the votes. The thing which I found impressive about Johnson is that Democrats were organising what they call a discharge petition to work around him and force a vote on Ukraine funding without his approval. They could have let them do that and avoided responsibility. But he chose to anger the Freedom Caucus types by embracing this bill and putting it on the floor himself. Why did he do that? He said this was personal for him.
To put it bluntly, I would rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys. My son is going to begin in the Naval Academy this fall. This is a live fire exercise for me, as it is so many American families. This is not a game. It's not a joke. We can't play politics of this. We have to do the right thing.
Even more impressive, Johnson knows that it only takes one person to challenge his leadership, but he's chosen to not try to change that rule. He tweeted out that members have encouraged me to endorse a new rule to raise this threshold, but any rule change requires a majority of the full House, which we do not have. He didn't even try. So he's a sitting duck to lose his job. Why is he doing this? Well, apart from him maybe believing in the policy, there are a few possible reasons. Firstly, Marjorie Taylor Greene and her crew are starting to appear genuinely unhinged.
I don't care if the Speaker's office becomes a revolving door. If that's exactly what needs to happen, then let it be. But the days are over of the old Republican Party that wants to fund foreign wars and murder people in foreign lands while they stab the American people in their face.
Yikes. And that's beginning to really annoy her fellow Republicans like Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw.
I guess their reasoning is they want Russia to win so badly that they want to oust the Speaker over it. I mean, it's a strange position to take.
Greene also seems to have completely lost Rupert Murdoch, judging by a Sunday New York Post front page. And she may even be losing Donald Trump. Trump World leaked to Politico that they found her antics, quote, 100% distraction and just stupid. They also said, it's fair to say we don't think she's being constructive. The internal fighting is not appreciated by Trump. Finally, it's possible that Johnson compromising on Ukraine has actually strengthened his speakership. Now Democrats are openly saying they'll support him if there is a challenge to his speakership.
You will protect Speaker Johnson's job if Marjorie Taylor Greene and the others go through with their threat to try to remove him.
I would, through the end of the term.
So it's possible that the extreme right might have finally pushed so hard, John, that they've made themselves irrelevant. Maybe?
Time will tell. Part of this foreign aid package, that's the fourth part that I alluded to earlier, will also have major implications for the Chinese-owned social media company TikTok.
The House voting to effectively ban the hugely popular social media app TikTok in the United States if it doesn't divest from its Chinese parent company. The ban not in effect as of now. That bill and the foreign aid bills now head to the Senate and then to President Biden.
The House TikTok bill gives the company 1 year to sell or be banned. This all over concerns that its data could be misused by Chinese officials to identify or trace users in the United States, and therefore it poses a national security threat, they fear. Speaking of which, a busy week on Capitol Hill. The bill to reauthorise FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, did pass the Senate and was quickly signed into law by President Biden. Here's Democrat Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Allowing FISA to expire would have been dangerous. It's an important part of our national security toolkit and helps law enforcement stop terrorist attacks, drug trafficking, and violent extremism.
Yeah, and it looks like going back to that TikTok sale or banning legislation, I think it's going to get up. The Senate objected to it before, but they've made some changes to the language now, and at least the chair of the relevant committee, Maria Cantwell, has said now that she will support the bill. So this might be happening, although so it might actually happen, but it doesn't mean we'll get through the Supreme Court, though.
No.
And we should mention that the Taiwan bill that John mentioned before does have funding for AUKUS in it as well, for those who remember what country we live in.
Indeed. So what does this aid package mean for Ukraine and for the United States as well? John Herbst is the former American ambassador to Ukraine. He was appointed by Republican President George W. Bush. These days, he's senior director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Centre. Ambassador, welcome to Planet America.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, in practical terms, what difference do you think on the ground this injection of tens of billions of dollars in American aid to Ukraine is going to make?
This is absolutely critical for Ukraine's ability to defend itself. It's not a surprise that Putin's told Tucker Carlson in that deferential interview that without Western, and meaning principally American support, quote unquote, he can win the war in a few weeks. While the timeline was hyperbole, the notion that he would win if our aid stopped is real. My strong view is as long as we support Ukraine, at least the way we have, Putin can in no way win. And if we were bolder in providing Ukraine with offensive weapons, they could win this war, and sooner rather than later.
Do you think it's possible for Ukraine to win the war with just this extra funding, or is that just impossible?
Well, I think it's unlikely, but not inconceivable if with the funding we and our allies sent more advanced weapons. The Biden administration has been reluctant to send Ukraine more advanced weapons. This has been a constant theme since even before the big invasion. And as a result, Ukraine's counteroffensive on land last year only achieved marginal success, something I predicted. If we had armed Ukraine for success to fight the way we fight, they could have had a major breakthrough on land, comparable to their major gains at sea. So if that were overcome, the possibility is there. But I think the administration's overly cautious approach will continue, unfortunately.
So, Ambassador, why the caution? Why the restraint? Is this about fears over Russia's threats to use tactical nuclear weapons?
That's exactly right. Of course, when you're in a confrontation with a nuclear superpower, and Russia is a nuclear superpower, you have to look very carefully and seriously at the danger of nuclear escalation. And America has very long experience with this during the Cold War. But never during the Cold War did we let Moscow push us around by their nuclear threats. Never in the Cold War did senior American officials say we cannot do X or Y or Z because Moscow may escalate. Sadly, we've heard such statements from the Biden team 8 or 10 or even more times in the past 2 years. So this is clearly something they have self-deterred because of Putin's bluff. They've not behaved the way the United States has behaved in previous confrontations, behaved like a nuclear superpower. So this is a problem, and this has gotten in the way of sound policy.
Mr. Ambassador, do you share the concerns that Mike Johnson expressed, that if Russia wins in Ukraine, they would then move on to other Eastern European countries, or is that just fear-mongering?
No, it's not fear-mongering at all. Look at the draft treaty that the Russians sent to NATO in December of 2021. They made clear that they want a veto over defense policy amongst all the Warsaw Pact members, meaning their former Soviet allies, and they want substantial political control in the space of the former Soviet Union, which includes 3 NATO allies, the Baltic states. So Moscow's ambitions definitely go well beyond subduing Ukraine. So the smart place for the United States and our allies to make sure Putin cannot achieve his objectives is in Ukraine, where we just need to provide Ukraine the arms and the economic support to stop Putin. And again, if we do that, there's no way Putin wins.
Ambassador John Herbst, thank you for being with us on Planet America.
My pleasure.
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. This is your life. You were elected to the Senate in 1972, and the first outfit to endorse your campaign was, of course...
First outfit ever to endorse me. As a 29-year-old kid, the Steelworkers endorsed me. It changed everything.
The Steelworkers Union. Wait, sorry. The first outfit to endorse you was, in fact...
The first outfit out there endorsed me when I ran in 1972 as a kid.
The Auto Workers Union. Wait, I'm now hearing the first outfit to endorse your campaign was actually...
First outfit ever to endorse me, I got the firefighters, and I won by a landslide of 3,800 votes. Anyway.
Of course. Sorry, it was the Firefighters Union. As one of America's youngest ever senators, you said...
I expect these fellows are going to eventually judge me on my merit, not on my age.
It's a battle you're still fighting to this day.
On the campaign trail with former President Donald Trump tied up for most of the week in a Manhattan courtroom, he was hoping he'd end the week with a big outdoor rally in Wilmington, North Carolina. Instead, rallygoers got him on speakerphone from Trump's private plane.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Donald Trump, your favorite president of all time, hopefully. As you can see, there's some very bad weather heading in, and we're flying in a few minutes, but they really would prefer that we not come in because there's a certain danger to all of this.
There was a heavy rainstorm, a lot of lightning in the area, so the rally was abruptly cancelled. And there was no solace in the polls either. They're heading in the wrong direction as far as Trump is concerned. He's just 1 point ahead of Joe Biden nationally, according to the latest poll from the New York Times and Siena. In late February, Trump enjoyed a 5-point buffer in the same poll. Another poll from NBC has Biden closing the gap to 2 points now, after trailing by 5 in that poll in January. That's head-to-head, but the really interesting poll from NBC showed independent candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. now drawing more votes away from Trump than he is from Biden, which might explain why, according to Kennedy at least, Trump asked him to be his vice presidential running mate.
I would not take that job. I'm flattered that President Trump would offer it to me, but it's not something that I'm interested in.
Did he reach out for his team?
People from the team have reached out to me.
Should note, though, that Trump and his team do deny that took place.
They do, although for the record, that story's been kicking around since about January. And back then, anonymous people said that Trump operatives expressed an interest in Kennedy right out of the box when Kennedy announced back in April 2023. So even if the story's true, I'm not sure it's necessarily relevant now. There's been a lot of water under the bridge since April 2023.
Yeah, indeed so. But I guess if it is true, it certainly undermines Trump's attempts now to redefine Kennedy as just too liberal. And either way, it does mean that one of the two of them is a stone-cold liar.
I wonder which one.
Yeah, it's hard to know these days. Meanwhile, Kennedy has qualified for the ballot in the potentially decisive swing state of Michigan. This is thanks to the little-known Natural Law Party, which has handed their ballot line over to Kennedy. President Biden is clearly aware of the danger that Kennedy poses to him as well, appearing this week alongside just about every living person with the last name of Kennedy in the United States, including Bobby's 6 siblings, to announce a collective Kennedy family endorsement of Biden.
We want to make crystal clear our feeling that the best way forward for America is to re-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to 4 more years.
Just to rub it in, they then put this video out, making out like Joe Biden was the real Kennedy in the race.
I think Joe Biden is the RFK of his generation.
This is a president who embodies the Kennedy legacy.
Now, it is, of course, still a very open question as to whether Kennedy and the other independents are going to ultimately help or hurt Biden. Analysis from Real Clear Politics this week suggested that right now Biden, in fact, has more to fear than Trump does, pointing out Trump's 4 percentage point edge in a 5-way race is a marked improvement over the 0.04% lead he holds over Biden in the average of head-to-head polls.
Yeah, although going back to that NBC poll before, it's true that a 5-way race did turn a 2-point lead to Trump into a 2-point lead for Biden. But to me, there was an even more interesting variable in that poll. When you only polled people who voted in the 2020 general election and the 2022 midterms, they're the people most likely to vote, Biden was ahead by 9 points. And amongst the people least likely to vote, those who voted in neither of those elections, Trump leads those people by 22 points. This is not a one-off either. NORC found that amongst those who hadn't voted since 2018, Trump was winning 44-26. Amongst those who had voted once in that period, Trump was ahead 45-33. For those who had voted twice, Biden had a narrow lead. And for those who voted in all 3 elections since 2018, Biden was smashing Trump 50-39. Echelon has asked some less common questions in their polling, which I'd like to share. Firstly, who would perform better in a hot dog eating contest? 58% to 13% say Trump would. No surprise there. Whereas 48% to 17% say Trump would also perform better at fighting a medium-sized dog. I don't know, I reckon Biden's got the experience in that one. 49% to 27% say Trump would perform better in a game of Monopoly. But on the other hand, Biden smashes Trump 44% to 24% at who would best change a baby's diaper. Trump has got the edge 35% to 26% on who would perform best at karaoke. And finally, here's a nail-biter, Trump only just edges out Biden on the crucial question of who would best build IKEA furniture. Forget the election, John. Get those just tune in into an IKEA dag stalk now.
Yeah, there's your cognitive test right there. And that's it for another action-packed trip to Planet America. We'll see you on ABC News at 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday night for a fireside chat.
We'll be back on Planet America at 10 p.m. next Wednesday on ABC TV and from 9 p.m. on ABC iView. Both shows are also on YouTube and Facebook whenever you like.
Bye-bye.